My 30th birthday. My parents confiscated $1,500,000 I'd worked a decade to save. Dad just chuckled. It's safe now. For your sister's future. Mom says you'd waste it anyway. But I also laughed, for what they grabbed was a clever trap I had laid. Imagine saving every single penny you could for 10 long years, building a future for yourself, only to have your own parents steal over $1 million of it, on your birthday, and then laugh in your face. My dad literally chuckled, saying, "Thanks. Your money just secured your sister's future." And my mom, "God," she added, "you would have wasted it anyway." But here's the kicker, I just laughed too. Because what they thought they stole, that was a trap. A trap I had spent months meticulously setting. My name is Tammy, and I just turned 30. Growing up in a pretty average neighborhood in suburban Boston, I learned my place in our family hierarchy quickly. It was never subtle. There were two roles. I was the responsible, hardworking older daughter, and my sister Hannah was the golden child who could do no wrong. This dynamic wasn't hidden. It was the entire foundation of our family. Our modest house felt like it had an invisible line down the middle. Hannah's tiniest achievements were celebrated with fanfare. Mine? A passing nod. Hannah won participation trophies in soccer, and they were framed. I won the state mathematics competition in 8th grade, and my parents missed the ceremony because Hannah had a minor cold. My dad, a banker, brought home a comfortable salary, but he also brought his controlling financial tendencies home. Every penny was tracked, every expense justified, unless it was for Hannah. My mom stayed home, then took a part-time job mainly to socialize. Her real job seemed to be enabling Hannah's increasingly expensive whims and excusing her behavior. By 12, I developed an intuitive understanding of money that even my father found surprising. While other kids blew their allowance on candy, I opened a savings account. I babysat, charged fair rates, and built a small but growing nest egg. I documented every cent in a blue ledger book, hidden between my mattress and box spring. Money gives you choices, I'd remind myself, especially when Hannah taunted me about being boring or obsessed with saving. The irony was not lost on me when she dropped out of college the first time, claiming the business program was too restrictive for her creative mind. Our parents funded a 6-month, finding herself, trip to Europe. When she dropped out a second time from an art program that cost them $30,000 in tuition, they bought her a car to cheer her up. Meanwhile, I put myself through Boston University with academic scholarships and by working 20 hours a week at the campus bookstore and as a research assistant. This pattern continued through our 20s. Hannah would start expensive projects, abandon them, and receive comfort and more money. I would work harder, save more, and receive lectures about enjoying life while you're young. The cognitive dissonance was staggering. "Tammy, not everyone is as naturally disciplined as you," my mother would say when I questioned why I had to pay for my own car insurance while they covered Hannah's. "Your sister needs more support to find her way." This wasn't just sibling rivalry. It was a systematic devaluation of my efforts and an unsustainable inflation of Hannah's worth. When I graduated summa cum laude and landed a position at a respected financial firm, my parents hosted a small dinner. When Hannah completed a 3-week photography workshop, they threw a gallery party at our house, inviting extended family and friends to purchase her overpriced, out-of-focus landscapes. The final straw came during my senior year of college. I discovered my parents had used the small college fund my grandparents had left me to pay off Hannah's credit card debt. When I confronted them, my father became defensive. "We'll pay you back, of course," he said dismissively. But Hannah was in real trouble. Those collection agencies were calling day and night. "You've always been able to take care of yourself." That night, something inside me shifted. I made a decision that would shape the next decade of my life. I would become so financially independent, so successful, that I would never need to rely on my family for anything. I would build wealth not just as security, but as armor against their manipulation and favoritism. Little did I know, this decision would eventually lead to both the greatest betrayal and the most satisfying victory of my life. After graduating from Boston University, I hit the ground running. Financial independence wasn't just a goal, it was my mission. I secured a position at Wentworth Financial, a prestigious firm in downtown Boston, known for aggressive investment strategies. The hiring manager even told me, "We don't usually hire straight out of undergraduate programs, but your financial models and analyses were superior to candidates with MBAs." From day one, I approached my career with strategic precision. I was at the office by 6:30 a.m. every morning, analyzing Asian market closings before anyone else arrived. I volunteered for the accounts nobody wanted, too complex, too small. I built financial models in my free time, testing theories against historical data. By 24, I was managing small client portfolios. By 26, I was promoted to senior analyst, the youngest in company history. My annual income had tripled, but my lifestyle remained virtually unchanged. While colleagues bought luxury cars and downtown condos, I stayed in my modest one-bedroom apartment in Somerville, driving the used Toyota I'd bought in college. I brought lunch from home, limited dining out to once a week, and tracked every expense meticulously. My investment strategy was equally disciplined. I diversified across markets, balancing high-risk investments with stable ones, funneling significant portions of my income into retirement accounts, a curated stock portfolio, real estate investment trusts, and even promising startups. While I was working 70-hour weeks building my future, Hannah was going through jobs like seasonal fashion trends. Receptionist? Quit because fluorescent lighting was depressing. Handmade jewelry online? Abandoned after 2 months. Each failure was met with parental support, both emotional and financial. "Your sister is a free spirit," my mother would explain during our monthly phone calls. "Not everyone is cut out for the corporate grind like you are, honey." The inequality was glaring. Hannah lived in a downtown apartment our parents subsidized, drove a car they financed, and received regular cash gifts to cover her expenses. Meanwhile, I'd been financially independent since college graduation, but was still expected to contribute to family birthday presents and holiday celebrations. When I turned 20, my father had insisted I open a joint account with my parents for family security purposes. His banking background made it sound reasonable. "It's just good financial planning," he'd explained. "If anything happens to you, we need to be able to manage your affairs without legal complications." Young and still somewhat trusting, I agreed, but I kept the vast majority of my finances in separate accounts. Over the years, small amounts would flow into that joint account, primarily for family expenses. What my father didn't know was that I tracked every single cent with precision, maintaining spreadsheets documenting all activity in that account. As my wealth grew, so did my father's interest in my financial affairs. Casual conversations increasingly turned to questions about my investments, savings, and career. At first, I attributed this to professional curiosity. Later, I recognized it for what it was: reconnaissance. The first major red flag appeared when I overheard my parents discussing my finances during a holiday gathering. I'd stepped out to the patio, but could hear them through the kitchen window. "She must have close to $1 million by now," my father said quietly. "Maybe more with those tech investments she mentioned." "Do you think she would help with Hannah's situation?" my mother replied. "After all, families should support each other." "We'll figure something out," he responded, a tone that sent chills down my spine. She's always been practical about money. I stood frozen. The cool night air suddenly insufficient. They weren't discussing asking for my help. The conversation carried undertones of entitlement, as if my money were a family resource rather than the result of my decade of sacrifice and hard work. That night marked the beginning of my suspicions. I had no idea how justified they would become. The warning signs accumulated gradually, like storm clouds building on the horizon before a devastating hurricane. Each incident on its own might have been dismissed, but together they formed an undeniable pattern. The first significant incident occurred when Hannah announced her third business venture in 2 years, an upscale pet boutique selling handcrafted accessories. Despite no experience in retail, animal care, or crafting, my parents funded the entire startup to the tune of $70,000. "Your father and I are a little stretched thin right now," my mother mentioned during Sunday brunch, 3 weeks after Hannah's grand opening. "We may need to borrow a small amount until some investments mature." "Just temporarily, of course." "How much are you thinking?" I asked, already suspecting the answer. Maybe 15,000, just for a month or two. I agreed, documenting the loan with a simple contract my father signed reluctantly, muttering about unnecessary formalities between family. 6 months later, after multiple gentle reminders, I mentally wrote it off. They never mentioned repayment again. Around this time, my father's interest in my financial statements intensified. He began asking specific questions about my portfolio performance, tax strategies, and banking arrangements. Just professional curiosity, he would say with a casual wave. I like to keep up with modern investment approaches. But his questions became increasingly specific, focusing on account structures, withdrawal limitations, and access protocols. As someone who had spent years in banking, he knew exactly what information would be useful for accessing accounts. My mother's behavior shifted as well. Her usual dismissive attitude toward my career transformed into backhanded compliments that probed for information. "You must be doing well to afford that watch," she remarked at a family dinner, though the timepiece was a modest brand. "I bet your accounts are just growing and growing with all your smart investments." The situation escalated when Hannah announced her engagement to a struggling musician she'd been dating for just 3 months. The wedding plans they described were extravagant: a destination ceremony in Santorini, a custom designer dress, and a reception for 200 guests at one of Boston's most exclusive venues. "It's going to be about 150,000, Hannah mentioned casually over dinner, as if discussing the cost of a weekend getaway. "But it will be worth every penny for the perfect day." When I asked how they planned to pay, my father cleared his throat and mentioned family resources, glancing meaningfully in my direction. The next incident sent my suspicions into overdrive. Returning from a business trip, I noticed subtle differences in my apartment. Nothing was obviously missing, but items had been shifted slightly, particularly around my home office. The locked drawer where I kept financial documents appeared untouched, but the stack of papers inside had been rearranged. 2 weeks later, my father accidentally took my laptop when leaving after a family dinner I had hosted. I grabbed it, thinking it was my work computer, he explained when returning it the next day. "Didn't even realize until I got home." The excuse might have seemed plausible if my sleek Ultrabook looked anything like his bulky work laptop. When I checked my browser history, I discovered searches for access procedures to my investment platforms during the exact hours the laptop had been in his possession. The final confirmation came when I installed a small security system in my apartment. The motion-activated camera in my home office captured my mother and father entering my apartment using the emergency key I had provided years earlier. The footage showed them methodically searching through my files, photographing documents, and attempting to access my computer. That same week, I had lunch with my financial advisor, Martin, who had become a trusted mentor. "Joint accounts are always risky, even with family," he warned when I mentioned some of my concerns. "Actually, the emotional complications make the financial entanglements more dangerous." "What are the vulnerabilities exactly?" I asked, though I was beginning to understand all too well. "Any joint account holder has full legal access to the funds, regardless of who deposited them," Martin explained. "They can withdraw everything without your permission or even notification in some cases." That evening, I received a call from a colleague at the bank where my joint family account was held. She mentioned that my father had been inquiring about withdrawal limits and procedures for large transfers. "I thought you should know," she said quietly. "It seemed unusual, and given the amounts discussed, I wanted to make sure you were aware." The final piece fell into place when I overheard my parents on a family visit. I had arrived early and let myself in, as was our custom. Their voices drifted from the kitchen. They didn't realize I was in the house. "Her 30th birthday would be the perfect time," my father was saying. "The account balance should be at its highest point with her annual bonus deposited." "But will she suspect anything?" my mother asked. "She's always been so careful with her money." And then my father again, his voice chillingly confident. "She trusts us. Besides, once it's done, what can she really do? Family accounts are legally accessible by all parties." Standing in the hallway, I felt an odd sense of calm descend. The betrayal hurt deeply, yes, but the confirmation of my suspicions provided absolute clarity. They were planning to take my money I had earned through years of sacrifice and hard work, to fund Hannah's irresponsible lifestyle. I had 3 months until my 30th birthday. It was time to set a trap that would expose their true intentions while protecting the fortune I had built. With absolute clarity about my family's intentions, I began methodically planning my countermove. This wouldn't be an emotional reaction, but a strategic operation executed with the same precision I applied to my investment portfolios. I had 6 months until my 30th birthday, and I intended to use every single day. First, I needed expert help. I scheduled meetings with 3 professionals: Diana Chin, a forensic accountant specializing in financial fraud; Robert Kessler, an attorney focusing on family financial disputes; and Marcus Jones, a cybersecurity expert. I shared my suspicions and evidence with each, carefully building my team. "What you're describing is unfortunately common," Diana told me during our initial consultation. "Family financial exploitation follows patterns, and your parents' behavior checks multiple boxes. The good news is that with advanced knowledge, we can create protective countermeasures." The plan we developed was multi-layered. The most critical first step was securing my actual wealth. Over 2 months, I methodically transferred my real assets, totaling approximately $5.8 million, into new, secure accounts under complex legal structures. I established an irrevocable trust with myself as the sole beneficiary, created 3 limited liability companies in different states, and opened accounts with financial institutions having no connection to my parents. "The key is compartmentalization and legal barriers," Robert explained as we reviewed the structures. "We're creating enough layers that, even if they discovered one, they couldn't penetrate the entire system." With my actual wealth secured, I turned to creating the decoy. I maintained the joint family account, but transformed it into an elaborate honeypot. I transferred $1.5 million into it, an amount significant enough to be tempting, but representing only about 25% of my total wealth. The source of these funds was crucial for believability. I liquidated some visible investments my father had known about, deposited my year-end bonus publicly, and made several large transfers that would appear in statements my parents might access. Marcus helped create a digital trail leading directly to this account. "We need to make the target obvious without appearing to be a setup," he explained, implementing subtle digital breadcrumbs. We created fake financial planning documents on my laptop, suggesting the joint account contained the bulk of my savings. We established email notifications that would alert me to any access attempts or withdrawal activities. "The best traps don't look like traps," Marcus reminded me. "They look like opportunities." Meanwhile, I installed additional hidden cameras in my apartment, focusing on areas where financial documents were stored. I recorded all phone conversations with my parents, carefully creating situations where they might reveal their intentions. I documented every instance of them asking about my finances, photographing my documents, or accessing my property without permission. To make the bait even more enticing, I began dropping casual mentions of a major investment plan I was considering after my 30th birthday. "I've been thinking about making a significant change to my portfolio structure after my birthday," I mentioned during a family dinner 3 months before the date. A sort of financial milestone to mark 3 decades. My father's eyes lit up instantly. "What kind of changes are you considering? Perhaps I could offer some advice." "Nothing concrete yet," I replied casually, "but it would involve consolidating accounts for more efficient management. Probably moving everything into 1 or 2 primary holdings, temporarily." This conversation achieved exactly what I intended. My father began calling more frequently, always finding ways to steer conversations toward my birthday plans and financial arrangements. My mother suddenly wanted weekly lunch dates, probing for details about my accounts and investments. I created fake financial statements showing increasing deposits into the joint account, leaving them accidentally visible during family visits. I made phone calls within earshot, discussing the consolidation of my assets for a major post-birthday investment opportunity. 2 months before my birthday, I tested the trap by leaving my laptop open with the joint account statement visible, stepping away during a family dinner at my apartment. The security camera captured my father approaching the computer, taking photos of the screen with his phone and returning to his seat before I came back from the kitchen. 1 month before my birthday, I hired a private investigator to document my parents' activities. He reported they had visited 3 different banks, inquiring about large transfers and withdrawal procedures. They had also consulted with a financial advisor specializing in sudden wealth management. With 2 weeks remaining, I verified all legal protections were in place. Robert confirmed that we had documented enough evidence to pursue criminal charges for financial exploitation if necessary. Diana had created forensic documentation of all my true assets, establishing clear ownership separate from the decoy account. "Are you prepared for the personal fallout?" Robert asked during our final preparation meeting. "Legal protection is one thing, but this will permanently alter your family relationships." I considered his question carefully. "My family relationships have been built on exploitation for years," I replied after a moment. "I'm not destroying something healthy. I'm exposing something toxic. I'm ready." The final step was psychological preparation. I worked with a therapist specializing in family trauma to process the emotions surrounding the planned betrayal and its aftermath. I needed to be clear-headed when the moment arrived. The night before my 30th birthday, I reviewed every element of the trap. The decoy account was funded and visible. My real wealth was secured behind multiple legal and technical barriers. Recording devices were in place. My team was on standby for immediate response. Everything was ready. All that remained was to watch my own birthday party become the scene of the most significant betrayal and counterattack of my life. My 30th birthday fell on a Saturday in early autumn. The day dawned crisp and bright, with just enough chill in the air to justify the cashmere sweater I had chosen. I dressed carefully, applying makeup that made me look slightly more vulnerable than usual. Today's performance required me to appear unsuspecting and emotionally open. My parents had insisted on hosting the celebration at their home, an unusual offer given their typical indifference to my milestones. Now, I understood the ulterior motive behind their sudden enthusiasm. "We want to make this birthday special," my mother had said. 30 is a big milestone after all. I arrived at 1 p.m. to find the house decorated with balloons and a happy 30th birthday banner. The effort seemed hollow, knowing what I knew, but I performed surprise and gratitude convincingly. "This looks wonderful," I exclaimed, embracing my mother. "You shouldn't have gone to so much trouble." "Nothing is too much for our successful daughter," my father replied, his arm around my shoulders, feeling heavy and foreign. "This is a day to celebrate all you've accomplished." Hannah arrived fashionably late with her fiancé, Todd, making a grand entrance in a designer outfit that probably cost more than my entire wardrobe. She air-kissed my cheeks and handed me a small gift box. "Happy birthday, sis," she said with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. 30 looks good on you." Throughout the afternoon, I maintained a careful balance between apparent enjoyment and strategic awareness. When offered wine, I pretended to drink, taking minimal sips. I needed complete clarity. Several family friends and distant relatives attended, providing helpful cover for my parents' scheme. These innocent guests created an appearance of normalcy that made the underlying deception even more disturbing. Around 4 p.m., after cake had been served, I implemented the next phase of my plan. I checked my phone and feigned excitement. "Oh, my investment alert just pinged," I announced, loud enough for my father to overhear. "That fund I was telling you about finally hit the target price." My father's attention visibly sharpened. "Sounds like good news?" "Potentially life-changing," I replied with calculated enthusiasm. "I need to check the details and maybe make some moves before Monday. Do you mind if I use the office for a few minutes?" "Of course not, sweetheart," my mother interjected. "Take all the time you need. We'll entertain the guests." In my father's office, I opened my banking app on my phone, navigated to the decoy account, and deliberately saved the password. I then left the phone unlocked on the desk and walked away, making a detour to the bathroom. There, I waited precisely 3 minutes while watching the hidden camera feed on my smartwatch. The footage showed exactly what I had anticipated. Less than 90 seconds after I left, my father entered the office, picked up my phone, and began rapidly navigating through the banking app. His fingers moved with practiced precision as he initiated a transfer from the joint account to an unfamiliar account number. The betrayal was unfolding exactly as predicted. I flushed the toilet to signal my return and watched on the smartwatch as my father hastily placed the phone back on the desk and exited the office. When I returned, the phone lay in precisely the same position, but the banking app had been closed. Almost immediately, my smartwatch vibrated with an alert from the security system I had established. The notification confirmed a transfer request of $1.5 million from the decoy account. The trap had been sprung. Returning to the party, I noticed subtle changes in my family's demeanor. My father seemed more relaxed, periodically checking his own phone with poorly concealed satisfaction. My mother was suddenly more attentive, refilling my wine glass and asking solicitously about my comfort. Hannah kept exchanging knowing glances with my parents, a smirk playing at the corners of her mouth. "A toast," my father announced, suddenly raising his glass. "To Tammy, not just on her 30th birthday, but to her contributions to our family's security and future. Family takes care of family." The irony of his words might have been comical if not for the profound betrayal they represented. I raised my glass and smiled, playing my part in this final act of their charade. "To family," I echoed, meeting his eyes steadily, "and to getting exactly what we deserve." He faltered slightly at my pointed response, but recovered quickly. The other guests, oblivious, continued celebrating innocently. At 6:30, my phone chimed with a bank notification, this one genuine. The transfer had been completed. $1.5 million had moved from the joint account to my parents' private account. The same account that would soon fund Hannah's extravagant wedding and bail out her failing business. I made a show of checking the message, allowing a flash of confusion to cross my face before quickly masking it. I needed my parents to believe, at least temporarily, that they had succeeded. "Everything okay?" my mother asked with false concern. "Just work," I replied smoothly. "Nothing that can't wait until tomorrow. But I should probably head out soon. It's been a long day." "So early?" my father protested weakly. "We haven't even given you your presents." "I'm just a little tired," I insisted, beginning my goodbyes. "This has been wonderful, but 30 hits differently than 29 did." As I gathered my things, Hannah approached, her expression a mixture of triumph and manufactured sympathy. "Big plans for tomorrow?" she asked casually. "Just some financial housekeeping," I replied. "Nothing exciting." "Well, don't work too hard," she said, patting my arm condescendingly. "Some things are more important than money." The audacity of her statement, given what had just transpired, was breathtaking. I simply smiled and kissed her cheek, whispering, "We'll see about that, won't we?" Driving home, I contacted my team. Diana confirmed the transfer had been documented forensically. Robert verified that all legal countermeasures were in place. Marcus reported that the digital evidence had been secured, including timestamps and account access logs. Everything was proceeding according to plan. My parents believed they had successfully stolen my life savings. They were probably celebrating at that very moment, congratulating themselves on their cleverness while planning how to spend my money. Tomorrow would bring the reckoning they never saw coming. Tonight, I would allow myself to fully process the reality that my own family had betrayed me in the most fundamental way possible. The knowledge hurt, despite my preparations, but it also liberated me from illusions I had maintained for too long. My 30th birthday had indeed marked a significant transition, though not the one my parents had planned. They thought they were witnessing my financial downfall. Instead, they had orchestrated their own exposure and sealed the fate of our relationship forever. I slept surprisingly well that night, perhaps because certainty, even painful certainty, is more restful than suspicion. I woke early, dressed with care in a crisp charcoal business suit, and prepared myself mentally for the confrontation ahead. This would be the most difficult conversation of my life, but also the most necessary. At precisely 9:30 a.m. Sunday morning, I parked in front of my parents' house. Their cars were in the driveway, along with Hannah's distinctive red convertible. Perfect. All the players in this drama were present for the final act. Through the front windows, I could see movement in the dining room. As I approached the door, I heard the unmistakable pop of a champagne cork, followed by laughter. They were celebrating their theft with morning mimosas. The timing couldn't have been more perfect for maximum dramatic impact. Instead of knocking, I used my key and entered quietly. Following the sounds of celebration, I walked to the dining room entrance and stood watching for a moment before they noticed me. The scene was exactly as I had imagined. My parents and Hannah were seated around the table with champagne flutes, a spreadsheet printout between them. My father noticed me first, his face transforming from jovial satisfaction to shock in an instant. The champagne flute in his hand tilted dangerously, spilling onto the white tablecloth. "Tammy," my mother exclaimed hastily, trying to cover the financial documents with a napkin. "We didn't expect you this morning." "Clearly," I replied, stepping into the room. My voice was calm, betraying none of the emotional turmoil beneath. "Don't stop the celebration on my account. It seems quite festive." Hannah immediately stood up. "I just remembered I have an appointment," she mumbled, gathering her purse. "Sit down, Hannah," I said, my tone leaving no room for argument. "This concerns you too." Something in my manner must have conveyed the futility of resistance, because she slowly sank back into her chair. "What's this about, Tammy?" my father asked, attempting to regain his authoritative demeanor. "We were just having a family brunch." "With champagne and financial statements." I raised an eyebrow. "Interesting brunch menu." I placed my briefcase on the table and opened it, deliberately removing a folder containing bank statements. "I received an interesting notification yesterday during my birthday party," I continued. "A notification about a transfer of $1.5 million from my account. You wouldn't know anything about that, would you?" My father's expression hardened into defiance. "That was a joint account, Tammy. Legally accessible to all parties." The admission was so immediate, so devoid of even attempted denial, that I almost admired his audacity. "So, you admit to taking my money without discussion or permission?" I clarified. "We didn't take anything that wasn't legally available to us," my mother interjected, her voice shrill with defensive indignation. "Family resources should support family needs. And what family needs required stealing $1.5 million from your daughter?" I asked, my voice remaining steady. "Your sister's wedding for one," my father replied, gaining confidence in his justification. "Hannah deserves a proper start to married life, and her business needs capital to truly succeed. You have more than enough with your fancy job and investments." I nodded thoughtfully, then removed a small recorder from my pocket and placed it on the table. I pressed play, and their voices filled the room. My father's voice emerged crystal clear. Her 30th birthday would be the perfect time. The account balance should be at its highest point with her annual bonus deposited. My mother's recorded voice followed. "But will she suspect anything? She's always been so careful with her money." And then my father again, his tone chillingly confident. "She trusts us. Besides, once it's done, what can she really do? Family accounts are legally accessible by all parties." The color drained from both their faces as their conspiracy played out in their own voices. I stopped the recording and placed the device back in my pocket. "That's just one of several recordings documenting your planned theft," I informed them calmly. "I also have video of you searching my apartment, accessing my computer without permission, and photographing my financial documents. Dad, I have footage of you using my phone yesterday to initiate the transfer." Hannah had been silently watching this exchange, but now she found her voice. "You were spying on them." "That's sick, Tammy. They're your parents." "And they were stealing from me," I countered. "Which is the more disturbing behavior?" "It's not stealing when it's family," Hannah insisted, the familiar refrain of entitlement evident in her tone. "You owe us for everything they've done for you." "I owe you." I couldn't help the incredulous laugh that escaped me. "I put myself through college. I built my career without help. I've been financially independent since graduation, while you've been draining our parents' resources for years with failed businesses and extravagant spending." "That's enough," my father thundered, standing up. "We made a legal financial decision regarding a joint account. There's nothing more to discuss." "There's quite a bit more to discuss," I corrected him, maintaining my composure, starting with the fact that what you transferred yesterday wasn't actually my life savings. A moment of confusion passed across his face. "What are you talking about?" "We saw the statements." You saw what I wanted you to see, I explained. The statements showing regular deposits, the account balance growing steadily over years. All carefully crafted to create the impression that you were accessing the majority of my wealth. You're bluffing, my mother said, but uncertainty had crept into her voice. In response, I removed another document from my briefcase and placed it before them. It was a statement from one of my actual accounts, showing a balance of just over $2 million. This is one of several accounts holding my actual assets, I explained. The $1.5 million you took was essentially a decoy, placed in that joint account specifically because I had discovered your plans and wanted to document your intentions. That's impossible, my father sputtered. We've been monitoring your finances for months. You've been monitoring what I allowed you to see, I corrected. The joint account, some visible investments, the financial documents I left accessible. My actual portfolio is significantly larger and completely secure from your access. The realization of what had occurred slowly dawned on their faces. They hadn't cleverly stolen my life savings. They had fallen into an elaborate trap designed to expose their true characters and intentions. So what now? My father asked finally, his voice hollow. You came here to gloat? I came here to give you a choice, I replied, removing a final document from my briefcase. This is a formal demand for the return of the $1.5 million you transferred, plus 3% interest, within 72 hours. If the funds are returned within that time frame, I won't pursue criminal charges for financial exploitation or civil action for the documented theft. Criminal charges? My mother whispered, horror spreading across her face. You would do that to your own parents? You are willing to steal my life savings, I reminded her. Which is worse? Hannah had remained uncharacteristically quiet, but now she erupted. You can't do this. The wedding venue is already booked. The deposits are paid. Your wedding is not my responsibility, I stated firmly. Neither is your business, your lifestyle, or any other expense you've been planning with my stolen money. My father picked up the document, reading it with growing resignation. And if we don't comply with this demand? Then my attorney files charges Monday morning, along with a civil suit, I explained. The recordings, videos, and financial documentation will become evidence. Given what I've collected, conviction would be virtually certain. The room fell silent as the gravity of the situation sank in. My parents exchanged glances filled with a mixture of anger, fear, and the dawning recognition that they had severely miscalculated. You've changed, my mother said finally, as if this explained or justified their actions. I've seen clearly, I corrected her. There's a difference. I closed my briefcase and prepared to leave, having said what I came to say. At the dining room doorway, I turned back for a final observation. You know what's ironic? If you had simply asked me for help with Hannah's wedding or business, I probably would have contributed something reasonable. But you chose to take everything. And in doing so, you've lost far more than money. As I walked to my car, I felt a strange combination of grief and liberation. The family I had known was gone, revealed to be an illusion built on exploitation rather than love. But in its place was clarity, and with clarity came the freedom to build something better for my future. The 72 hours following the confrontation were surprisingly quiet. I half expected frantic calls or emotional manipulation attempts, but my phone remained largely silent. The only communication came from my father, a terse email confirming the money would be returned by the deadline, with the requested interest included. True to his word, exactly 71 hours after our confrontation, I received notification that $1,545,000 had been transferred into my designated account. The principal plus 3%, calculated to the penny. Even in defeat, my father's banking precision remained intact. With the financial matter resolved, I immediately severed all remaining ties. I closed the joint account, removed my parents as emergency contacts on all documents, and changed the locks on my apartment. My lawyers sent formal communications, establishing clear boundaries and explicitly prohibiting them from attempting to access any of my financial information or personal property. For several weeks, silence reigned. Then the attempts at reconciliation began, though reconciliation might be too generous a term. Hannah called first, her approach as transparent as glass. I know things got intense, But we're still family, she began, her voice carefully modulated to sound conciliatory. Maybe we can talk things through over coffee? What specifically would you like to discuss, Hannah? I asked, already knowing the answer. A brief hesitation. Well, about the wedding, actually. The venue is requiring the full payment earlier than expected, and with what happened. I ended the call politely but firmly. 2 days later, my mother tried a different angle, emphasizing family loyalty and attempting to reframe their actions as misguided concern for my financial well-being. We only wanted to make sure your money was being properly managed, she insisted. Your father has decades of experience in banking, after all. Managing my money by transferring it to your account without my knowledge? I questioned. That explanation doesn't align with the recorded evidence. My father never called directly, instead sending a formal letter that acknowledged irregularities in their approach, while still maintaining they had acted with the family's best interests at heart. The letter concluded with a request to move forward in a productive manner, which I correctly interpreted as another attempt to access my resources. I responded to each attempt with consistent, firm boundaries. I wasn't angry anymore, just resolved. The clarity I had gained was too valuable to sacrifice for the illusion of family harmony that had never truly existed. During this period of readjustment, I focused on rebuilding other aspects of my life. I moved from my modest apartment to a secure luxury condominium in downtown Boston, with proper security systems and a doorman who screened all visitors. The space became my sanctuary, decorated exactly to my preferences without consideration for anyone else's opinions. I found unexpected support in a therapy group for survivors of family financial exploitation. The stories shared there confirmed that my experience, while painful, was far from unique. Many successful people discovered their achievements made them targets for family members who felt entitled to the fruits of their labor. The hardest part isn't the money, shared one woman whose siblings had systematically drained her small business accounts. It's accepting that the people who should love you most see you as nothing more than a resource to be exploited. Those words resonated deeply. The theft attempt had never really been about money. It was about value and respect, or the lack thereof. My family had never seen me as a person deserving of the same consideration they gave Hannah. I was the reliable one, the responsible one, the one who could be taken from without consequence. Professionally, I channeled my experience into a new specialization within my firm, developing financial protection strategies for high-earning individuals, particularly women. I created educational programs on financial independence and security, speaking at conferences and writing articles on recognizing and preventing exploitation. 6 months after the confrontation, I established the Financial Independence Foundation, providing resources, education, and legal support for young women establishing careers in male-dominated fields. The foundation quickly gained recognition for its practical approach to financial empowerment and protection. Through this work, I built meaningful connections with people who valued my knowledge and respected my boundaries. These relationships, based on mutual respect rather than obligation or exploitation, formed the foundation of a chosen family that proved far more supportive than my biological one had ever been. Among these new connections was Daniel, a corporate ethics attorney I met at a financial security conference. Unlike previous relationships where I had maintained careful distance, I found myself able to trust Daniel's genuine interest in me as a person, not as a financial resource. Our relationship developed slowly, built on shared values and transparent communication about expectations, including financial ones. I've never met someone so clear about their boundaries, he told me over dinner one evening. It's refreshing to know exactly where I stand. Clarity came at a high price, I admitted, but I wouldn't trade it, even to have my family back as they were. On my 31st birthday, instead of a family gathering, I hosted a celebration with my chosen family of close friends, colleagues, and mentoring relationships. The contrast between this genuine celebration and the previous year's deceptive event couldn't have been more stark. As I reflect now, I recognize the profound lessons it taught me about money, relationships, and self-worth. Money doesn't just provide material security, it reveals character. When significant sums are involved, people show their true priorities and values. My parents and sister had always viewed my success as a family resource rather than my personal achievement, and the money simply brought that perspective into clear focus. I learned that financial independence for women isn't just about earning and saving, it's about protecting what you've built from those who feel entitled to it. This protection requires both practical strategies and emotional boundaries, especially with family members who may leverage emotional connections for financial gain. Most importantly, I discovered that real family supports your growth rather than exploiting it. True love celebrates your success instead of seeing it as an opportunity for personal gain. The people who deserve a place in your life are those who value you for who you are, not what you can provide them. The trap I set for my parents ultimately freed me from the trap I had been living in for decades, a cycle of achievement followed by exploitation, justified as family obligation. In exposing their betrayal, I liberated myself from patterns that would have continued indefinitely, draining not just my financial resources, but my emotional well-being. Today, my life is built on authentic relationships and clear boundaries. My wealth continues to grow, protected by structures that ensure it remains secure. The family I've chosen supports my success without expectation of personal benefit. I found peace in creating distance from toxic relationships while building meaningful connections with those who demonstrate integrity. Have you ever discovered someone close to you had ulterior motives involving your success or resources? How did you handle that betrayal? And what boundaries did you establish afterward? Tell me what you think. I really want to know.